Monsters on Netflix is looking again at the Menendez brothers' horrible, gruesome murder of their parents. And when we look at their Bazi Chinese astrology, does it reveal whether they were speaking any amount of truth about what they accused their parents of doing, and especially the father? So welcome. This is Lydia on the Bazi Chinese astrology channel. We also cover feng shui and flying stars feng shui. I have been doing this work for over 20 years. I personally find trials to be very interesting to unpack and to look at the stories behind the people involved. So looking at the Menendez brothers, I mean, you know that if I've got something to look at with you, it's got to be a good story. Otherwise, it's not worth talking about. So anyway, if this sparks interest for you, please subscribe, like, hit the bell, all the good things so you don't miss a single video. Thank you. Thank you. And leave your comments, your questions. Please keep them positive and kind. So let's look at brother number one, Lyle Menendez, born January 10th, 1968 at 12:10 in the afternoon. I'm going to hold his up. I did print these out. And each of these brothers, it's very interesting. I am watching this show on Netflix, and, you know, it is an interesting thing. They are two very different people, all right? And then you've got the younger brother, Erik Menendez, born November 27th, 1970 at 23:23. And there's his chart. So as we're looking at this, each of them has some interesting stuff going on. And I believe it was the oldest one, Lyle, that accused his father of sexual misconduct. So all that to be said, let's get into this. So let's start with Lyle. And what I'm going to do in this video is look at not only their astrologies, but also, this is something we do a lot on this channel, look at the correlation of the charts and how these people interacted with their family members, what was going on with their luck cycles, remembering that we go through these 10-year cycles in our lives that is determined by your year of birth. We also want to look at their life pillar, the hidden part of their chart, to understand why they're even here on this planet living their karmic life. We're also going to look at the day of the murder, the astrology of the day of the murder, and the day of their ultimate sentencing to life without parole. Okay. So, again, Lyle is born January 10th, 1968, 12:10 in the afternoon. This is a yin fire sheep year, yin water ox month, day of yin earth rabbit, hour of yang metal horse. So right away, we've got some things going on. One interesting piece, his year and his month. The sheep and the ox they battle each other out. One of the things you want to look for in a Bazi astrology is, where do we have flow? Where do we have harmony? And where do we have conflict? Where do we have the punishments, the penalties? So the sheep and the ox battle each other, raising up the earth and weakening fire and water. So when we look at his chart, we can see this is already somebody that is extremely strong in their own element of earth, 39%. So this shows that this, even though this is a conflict going on in the chart, it does speak of the fact that this conflict is to his favor, meaning that it is supporting his inflated ego, if you will. Because a lot of times people who have a lot of their own self element, him being a yin earth person, tends to be very self-centered, can be egotistical, and definitely kind of life really radiates all from them in a way where I think more people tend to be a balance of self-awareness and other awareness, if that makes sense. Being out in the world as well as taking care of your own internal landscape. So the other thing with this chart is that the rabbit of his day and the sheep of his year forms a semi-fire trio, supporting him directly as an earth person. That fire is reinforcement. We also have a chart that is 2 yin. This person is extremely smart, very innovative, somebody that has the capacity for cutting corners, taking shortcuts, cheating to get ahead, or, killing your parents to get ahead. That didn't get them very far. I think they had 3 months of a giant spending spree before it all came crashing down. This is also, Lyle was somebody who loved life and lived it big while he could. Now he's living it small, as small as you can make it. He is also somebody that in the shadow side of this would be somebody that is kind of takes the good life too far. That could be substance abuse, other kinds of abuse. And it's also somebody who has a volatile emotions and needs to be the one in charge, does not like being told what to do. Now, I don't know his father's chart, but I would imagine Lyle and his dad really were combative. And add to this, his chart is 2 yin, way 2 yin. I think his only yang component is in his hour, the yang metal. So this shows somebody that leans a little more into that divine feminine. And the fact that he claims that his father abused him inappropriately, you've got to kind of look at, and this was while he was a little boy. So we look at what's going on in the first, the other thing that just came to me, this is really weird, because at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, could you do such a thing? What would push you that far? Because he's born in the year of a sheep and the day of a rabbit. Who else do we know with those configurations? Yeah, Johnny Depp and Bruce Willis. And I feel like there's some other celebrity that has this. But anyway, point being, this is somebody that typically would be very chilled out. It would be somebody who is pretty, in their divine feminine, very nurturing, very artistic, talented even. This is somebody that, that you feel like is trustworthy, very peaceful, doesn't like confrontation, just very pieced out, chilled out person. All right, so you start to put pieces together. Now, I don't know about you. I'm a pretty laid back, peaceful person myself. If I am in a container, an environment in which I feel somebody is aggressing against me or yelling at me, even being possibly violent towards me, or the threat of that, it's, for people that are sensitive, I guess that's what I'm getting to, this, that assault, that even just energetically, let alone the content of what's being yelled at you or physically done to you, it's felt even deeper than somebody that's maybe more yang and has maybe a tougher skin. Now, if you see the sheep at their worst, their shadow side, they tend to be self-indulgent, irresponsible, vulnerable, and overly sensitive, okay? And when you look at the shadow side of a rabbit, they are the moodiest people. They can be snobbish. They can be secretive and very self-focused, condescending, detached. And the fact that he's born on the day of the sheep shows how it's like you kind of regress into yourself. A little sheep, little rabbit kind of goes into his burrow, but he can't get away from it. It's very hard when you are in a family setting that is abusive, because as a child, you have no ability to escape from it. And so, when we look at his life pillar, that is an interesting thing, because the life pillar is a dog, a yang metal dog. And what is this talking about? This is chilling. This speaks of a rebellious person. And again, somebody innovative, very creative, very imaginative, very smart, but a rebellion. The potential for being rebellious. And someone that is struggling to find their identity, and shows the number one relationship here is his brother and harm to the father. Just, yeah, right? It's like, okay, there we go. That's what you came into this life to do. So seeing this kind of rebellious energy sitting on top of his brother and harm to the father as his hidden life pillar, the reason he came into this life. Now, family dynamics are fascinating. This is group karma. We have our own individual karmic journey we come in to live, but when we get into a container like family, a workplace, all of a sudden, there's that whole other layer. Now your karmic journey is being impacted and affected by the collective. What's going on here, right? So what is it ultimately? It all boils down to, what are we trying to learn? All right, so his relationship to his parents. From his day pillar, we look at the month of Yin Water Ox. This is very weird to me. His father is in the role of father. It shows that is the patriarch of the family, and that's how he is identifying with his father, as a father figure. He looks at his mother. What does he see with his mother? A comrade and a friend. A sister, even that. Tucked into the ox is again another father figure, showing that she also could be a stronger authority. But I don't see how his yin earth, like his self with his parents, I'm not seeing that he came into this life to have anything other than a father and a mom that was a best friend. Doesn't sound like anything bad to me, right? And it would be interesting to look at the mom and dad's charts, but we're just going to stick with the brothers here. So then we're going to look at when this abuse is said to have happened, which was when he was a little boy. though I don't know if it continued. But he's born January 10th by, so sometimes seeing 6s and 8s gets mixed up. All right, so it looks like June 18th, 1969. Right around a year old, very, very young, still possibly considered an infant. He goes through his first luck cycle change. And this usually marks some event happening that breaks the energetic umbilical cord between the mother and the baby. And it can be a big move. I know that they moved a lot, I think, when they were younger, but they might have moved, or maybe there was stress in the family, something going on with or maybe it was postpartum. Nobody was talking about that back in the 60s. So this is Yang Water Rat. Now, this is interesting because this is a huge wave of water. Water is what, for this chart, it's interesting because it's pretty almost balanced, almost. He has 20% fire, 39% very strong of his own earth element. The metal, what he produces, is balanced at 17%, probably even more so with so much earth. Water is the weakest at 11%, wood slightly weak at 13%. So water and wood are actually beneficial to this chart. But this is a huge wave of water. And this is creating a lot of conflict in his chart for being such a little man. This is the first 10 years of Lyle Menendez's life. Okay. And if you ask me, this is where all the damage was initially done, that for the next 10 years, whatever else was happening was just that much too much. Okay. This rat shows that the greatest influence was wealth, home, property, travel, moving home. And it shows that the father was the most influential parent figure. In addition to that, so we've got, that is the primary person influencing his life now. Then add to that the rat and his year of the sheep harms all that water. So it shows the water is flowing in, but it's being kind of like almost like rocks are being put in the way to break it up, so it's not as flowing. There's obstacles in the path. Add to that the rat is the enemy of the horse in his hour. During this time, it's interesting, during this first 10 years, his brother is born. His brother is represented in that hour of the horse. And so this shows that there's some like conflict and opposition happening within that relationship with his little brother. Maybe it's competition. After all, this is a battle of water and fire. And fire is stronger, except all this water is flowing in. So this creates a very steamy situation for a kid that's already pretty volatile. And on top of his volatility, it's like this juxtaposition of somebody that is innately passive and quiet, but has this tug of war within him of what he controls and what controls him. Now, the next piece is the real, this is it. His day of the rabbit, his little self, and this rat forms a punishment. And this is the only reason why I would even venture to believe what Lyle claims about his father. Because that punishment of rat and rabbit shows relationships that go south. Something gets really weird and wicked, and as a result, harm is done to the person. This is landing on his day pillar. In some ways, because the pattern to his chart is earth, all this water coming in, there was real threat to this kid's well-being in this 10 years of his life. I'll just leave it at that. A real threat to his welfare. And that welfare can be mental, physical, and spiritual. And, you know, we don't talk much about spiritual damage. You know, when somebody's spirit is broken by trauma. But that, it's like goes even deeper. So that is like, if you ask me, that's where the seed is planted. Now, if we jump ahead to when the murders happened in 1989, that was the year that he moved into this luck cycle, 1989. He's 21 years old. The day of the murders was a yin earth snake year. The month of yang water monkey, the day yang water rat, the hour yang water rat. This is the setup. Here you've got double rat hitting up against Lyle's day, showing bizarre behavior in regards to other relationships going weird, wonky, and damaging. And on top of that, we have the collective penalty of that day, actually the whole month and that year, the monkey and the snake, showing that as a collective, this was more likely to be a month when there would be legal issues or violence or death or accidents or illness, et cetera, et cetera. And to add to that the monkey plus the rat makes more water in an extremely watery. I mean, it's almost like this day and time that they killed their parents. It's a wonder that he didn't die himself, really. Though there was so much water in his chart that it could have easily broken his earth pattern. So it's very, very interesting to me. So that penalty, you know, really defines his life. The fact that it was the mark and in the first 10 years of his life, and then the mark on the day of the murder is so fascinating to me. Now, sentencing day was a yang fire rat year. Look at that. And the month of a yang wood horse, and the day yang metal rat, and the hour, oh, we don't have an hour for that, the sentencing. Anyway, it's not even necessary. At this point, it's not even necessary because, again, we have a year of the rat and a day of the rat. This really, if you ask me, Lyle is really holding most of this. And I wonder if he's the one that initiated their killing of the parents. like I said, this was trauma that was seeded as a kid. That then, and this is the other interesting thing in trauma. This, it's like some part of his development was frozen. It's like stunted. So within that, it's like some part of him didn't grow up properly. It leaves you fragile. It leaves you susceptible to repeating some of this. And that's what happens. The guy, I think, if you ask me, I think he just literally snapped. But the fact that this sentencing day brings again that harm, that penalty, that really marks so much of his life. Wow. Wow, wow. So let's move on to brother number 2, Erik. All right, so Erik, this one is a little bit different. And also interesting to note that Erik is born in the hour of the rat. All right, and the day, all right, let's start with him. Let's go through his chart. I don't know if I held this up for you, but there you go. Now, the thing with this is, and this is a true example of where penalties show up in and conflicts show up in charts and how it plays out in these dynamics. So he's born Yang Metal Dog Year, Yin Fire Pig Month, Yin Metal Pig Day, Yang Metal Rat Hour. Now, the first thing I see as 2 pigs is a self-harm. It shows somebody that is it's self-punishment. It's like you get easily frustrated with yourself. You talk yourself out of things. You talk yourself into things. You regret something. You don't regret it. Buyer's remorse, buyer's regret. Getting stuck in old patterns of thinking. You can't let it go. That kind of thing. And where is that sitting? His month and his day. So this penalty is between him and his brothers and his parents. Okay. So we're going to leave that. We're going to look at him. Now, Erik is slightly too yang. He also has a very cold, wet chart. And, he's got a lot of water and a lot of metal. So he's a metal person, yin metal, 34%, very little support of earth, 6%. Where does he get that support? Right, exactly. His brother Lyle, 39% earth, strong enough to share. Just saying. We sometimes, and the fact that Lyle's water is weak and Erik's is so strong, they're benefiting energetically from each other. So water is strong, 38%. That's the pattern of this chart. Might be a little bit more. Wood is weak at 9%, fire weak at 11%. This is somebody who is all about justice and fairness. And the pig, everybody loves the pig, right? Easy going, no big drama. Super easy getting along. So then we have to ask, all right, well, what are their personalities? How does this, play out for them? These are 2 very different people. I'll just say, very different. The only part that they both had in common was that they both really loved life and wanted to live life big glamour, big, like lots of beautiful, fun things, to live life to the fullest. But again, that shadow side of taking it so far that it becomes harmful to the self, like, again, drug addiction or whatever. Where he is so strong is Erik is a stalker. He's got like that, he's a communicator. He also can be funny, but his funny can also be mean-spirited, like, making jokes at somebody else's expense. But Erik also has a very strong signature of wanting to help people. And the same time, the shadow side of that is you can push yourself so hard. And with a dad who's dominating you, go, harder, work harder, you're a loser, you're a piece of whatever, go. And you've already got that for yourself. If you're one of those people that tends to be a perfectionist, and you're really hard on yourself, and then you have got somebody else pushing on you, that can be the breaking point. So that's something very strong in his chart. The threat of having psychological issues that come from pushing yourself too far and living a life too big. Too much of anything does not do us any good. So, but yeah, this is a kid that's got a fixed mindset. He's stubborn. He overanalyzes, overthinks everything, and he's his own worst enemy, basically. All right, so all that interesting. And then, as we go further along in here, this is like more so than even Lyle. Yeah, it's like very young and very naive kind of energy with this person. Anyway, you add to that his life pillar is a yang water horse. This is emphasizing, and the horse is kind of helpful in that it brings in needed fire, but it is battling with his really strong water, which again is the pattern of the chart with his hour. And then the horse in his life pillar is creating a semi-fire trio with his year of the dog, which when you have even a semi-trio of an element, it cancels out the conflict, which is lovely because that fire is needed. What is his life about? His life, just like his brother, is also about living a life that is rebellious, possibly reckless, very smart, possibly even intuitive, but somebody that is rebellious. The next piece, the yin fire of the horse, speaks of people in his life, and this is what he came in to learn. People in his life who are critical, obstinate bullies that threaten his welfare, threaten his position in life, threaten his life. Even his life can be threatened. This often is authority figures, teachers. It can be an employer. It can be your parent. And next to that is that he is here to learn something. This is even more than anything else. This is a person on a journey where he is going to learn through all of those really hard relationships, challenging relationships. And there's also a certain amount of support that comes in from outside places like, I don't know, a prison. For somebody not in prison, I would say banking or government support. So when we look at his life, where it starts to come apart for him, if you ask me, because Erik's first luck cycle shift is 1974. He's 3 years old. And the number one relationship for him, not like Lyle, who's being saturated with the toxic relationship he has with his father, Erik is more entwined with the mom and her influence. And for the most part, he looks like a pretty happy-go-lucky little kid. Active, rambunctious, out, enjoying life. Even possibly a nurturing, caring kid. And these murders taking place in 1989 were in his second luck cycle of a yin earth ox. So this is where, for him, things start to escalate. This is ages 13 to 22. The ox and his dog form a semi-punishment that shows family stresses that weaken your life force. So that's like snapshot description of that. It is stress from your family that is bad enough to weaken your own life force. It can cause all kinds of issues for yourself, as well as the collective of the family. And again, family can stretch into other containers depending on the situation. Now, this whole period for him is emphasizing education and outside resources. Again, that can be like somebody going off to college and getting a grant, getting a loan, getting scholarships, all of those kinds of things. It can also, it's those kinds of resources. So all of that earth is nourishing his metal self. This isn't the worst situation for him. The worst part is the punishment. There's also, if you look at this, there is a semi-water trio that becomes a full water trio during this 10-year period, which shows a lot of emphasis for taking action and being very, very productive during this time. All right. So nothing earth-shattering, nothing too crazy here, right? So in 1989, when the murders take place, we look at, is there anything else going on that could possibly point to something weird happening? And again, there is a tsunami of water on the day they murdered their parents. A tsunami of water. Wow. So water being the pattern of this chart just shows this is a massive action day. This is just massive action. But I don't see what I see in Lyle's chart. My guesstimate would be that this was very much led by Lyle and getting Erik involved. So that would be my take on this whole thing. They're sentencing 1996. By this time, he's in a yang metal tiger period. And that's surging in a whole bunch of fire, which is what rules him. And this shows that during this period, there is a focus on his brother and on him basically going through an identity crisis. Who am I now? Who am I now? And he was separated from his brother for like over 20 years or something. He lost everything. He lost his family. So, there you have it. Pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. But again, if you ask me, you know, Erik's got the stubbornness. He's got a self-harm, you know, a lot of this. But I don't see near the potential for abuse and the influence of that abuse on Erik as it is on Lyle. But there you have it. Interesting, friends. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you. And again, I appreciate your comments and your questions. And until next time, be well.